Welcome to the 2020 Brewbound Awards. My name is Justin Kendall, and I am the editor of Brewbound. And joining me today is Brewbound reporter Jess Infante. Jess, are you ready to give out some awards?
I am so excited to give out awards.
Well, we're going to run this video and let you guys all know who the 2020 Brewbound Award winners are. So let's roll that tape.
The 2020 Cause of the Year Award goes to Weathered Souls Brewing for Black is Beautiful, a collaboration aimed at raising awareness to the injustices faced daily by people of color. After protests against police brutality spread across the U.S. following the killing of George Floyd, a black man who was suffocated by a police officer who pressed his knee into Floyd's neck for nearly 9 minutes. Weathered Soul Brewing co-founder and head brewer Marcus J. Baskerville launched the Black is Beautiful initiative. Participating breweries were asked to donate 100% of their version of Black is Beautiful Imperial Stout to local organizations that support police brutality reform and legal defenses for those who have been wronged, support local equality and inclusion efforts, and commit to the long-term work of equity. Nearly 1,200 breweries from 50 states and 22 countries committed to take part in the Black is Beautiful effort. Boston Beer Company and their Truly Hard Seltzer line is Brewbound's 2020 Beyond Beer Company of the Year. Firmly entrenched as the second largest hard seltzer player in the U.S., Boston Beer Company's Truly Hard Seltzer family grew into a top 10 best-selling brand family according to market research firm IRI. Truly rode the wave of one of its top innovations in 2020, Truly Lemonade Seltzer, to become a top 25 selling brand. The 2020 Person of the Year Award will be shared by 4 individuals for their efforts to make permanent the federal excise tax cuts within the Craft Beverage Modernization and Tax Reform Act. Permanence for the tax cuts was a nearly 2 decades-long effort that finally came to fruition in December 2020 as part of a relief package passed by Congress and signed by the President. Brewbound's 2020 Person of the Year is shared by Brewers Association President and CEO Bob Pease, Brewers Association Federal Affairs Manager Katie Marisick, Beer Institute President and CEO Jim McGreevy, and Beer Institute Senior Director of Federal Affairs, Joe Heaton. New for 2020, Brewbound is honoring one person for their advocacy for and contributions to the beer industry. For advocating on behalf of small brewers and small businesses during the COVID-19 pandemic, the first Beer Champion Award goes to co-founder and chief brand officer of Denizens Brewing Company, Julie VERRATTI. The 2020 Large Brewery of the Year is awarded to New Belgium Brewing Company. A year after the Fort Collins, Colorado headquartered craft brewery was acquired by Keurig-owned Lion Little World Beverages, the company prospered behind the Voodoo Ranger line of IPAs. As consumers shifted their purchasing to off-premise retailers, New Belgium thrived, claiming 5 of the top 30 best-selling brands according to IRI. Voodoo Ranger Imperial IPA became the company's flagship offering in 2020 and the 3rd best-selling IPA in off-premise retailers. Portland, Maine's ALLAGASH Brewing Company is Brewbound's 2020 Craft Brewery of the Year. Founded by Rob Todd in 1994, Allagash has established itself as one of the most respected craft breweries in the nation. Allagash lost about 70% of its sales when the pandemic shut down on-premise business in March 2020. The company then poured several years of innovation into 3 months and launched several new brands, including Little Grove Sparkling Session Ales. The company also donated $10,000 through the Black is Beautiful program to Indigo Arts Alliance, a nonprofit organization committed to the artistic development of people of African descent, and Maine Inside Out, a nonprofit organization that collaborates with incarcerated and formerly incarcerated youth to create art for social change. Throughout the pandemic, Allagash kept its focus on its employees, instituting programs to combat isolation and making mental health counseling services more accessible. In an increasingly challenging and competitive craft brewing industry, these 6 players emerged as rising stars to watch in the coming years. Athletic Brewing Company, Stratford, Connecticut. Bow and Arrow Brewing Company, Albuquerque, New Mexico. Green Bench Brewing Company, St. Petersburg, Florida. Jack's Abbey Craft Lagers, Framingham, Massachusetts. Other Half Brewing Company, Brooklyn, New York. Urban Roots Brewing and Smokehouse, Sacramento, California.
All right, those are our award winners. And historically, we've given out the awards during our annual business conference, Brewbound Live, held every December, except for this one, which was virtual. And rather than cram it all into 1 week, we decided to break it up and announce the awards in January, just to sort of take a step back. So here we are. We're going to meet the 2020 class of rising stars to discuss how their 2020s went and what their plans are for 2021. So let's meet the 6 rising stars in Brewbound's 2020 class. And now we're joined by the founders of Brooklyn, New York, headquartered Other Half Brewing Company. Here today are Sam Richardson, Matt Monahan, and finally, we've got Andrew Berman. We're glad that all of you could be here today and talk about the 2020 you guys had. It was a challenging year, but it was a big one for you guys. You opened a new location in Washington, D.C. You launched the All Together initiative with Stout Collective and Craft Peak to raise money for laid off hospitality workers. So when you guys look back at 2020, how do you reflect on the year that Other Half had?
Well, I would say we look back on it, and I think we see a lot of positives. We're very fortunate this year to be able to keep moving forward despite all the setbacks that the industry as a whole and country as a whole is facing. Obviously, there's a lot of things we would have liked to do that we couldn't, but in all, I think that it was a great year for us.
Yeah, I can definitely second that. We're super fortunate to have the staff that we did, and and a ton of Andrew's leadership through reorganizing just how we do business. We were able to sort of pivot in ways that we didn't expect to be able to, and it worked out for the best, and we were still able to sort of get our product into the hands of the people that were asking for it. Time and time again throughout the entirety of the year, which is great.
So like Justin said, you guys had a big year and you made a lot of moves. What do you think are the long lasting implications of the business changes you made this year, and how can we expect them to carry on into the future? Let's start with you, Sam.
Well, we had to do a lot of thinking about how we do business. Most of our business to date had been, or pre-pandemic, was directly out the front door of the brewery, and it became more difficult to do that as people were restricted in travel. So we had to rethink that some. As far as the long term, I mean, I think that there was always going to be a certain amount of beer that's going to leave the brewery in ways we hadn't expected originally. But we are looking forward to getting the community back into our breweries once that happens. It's a big deal for us to have people in-house interacting with our people, and that's just the best way to promote beer.
Great. And then how, we talked a little bit about the new DC location. So how do you guys see that affecting Other Half going into the future? What do you think, Andrew?
So DC is, as Matt was saying, a place where was built for people to come on site. And it's one of those places that we did an amazing job of just having everything ready. And then the pandemic hit. So we're really excited to get past this point to really showcase an element that we don't have in Brooklyn, which is getting a huge amount of people on site and have really cool events and have festivals and have things that are really specialized for that area.
Matt, how do you see that location and the other two that you guys run sort of accelerating the business in 2021?
I think the overarching goal of Other Half has always been to sort of get our beer into as many people's hands that want it. We've never really shoved anything down someone's throat. We're always trying to keep up with the demand. DC allows us to sort of reach pockets of the region that have been asking for our beer for a long time. and are now able to start seeing it on a regular basis. You know, our goal is first always to get a beer in someone's hand, and then after that is to get them into one of our locations. You know, the real other half experience is the on-site. You know, it's the energy and the feeling you get when you're there, you know, amongst other like-minded, you know, people that are just into beer, that are just into community, and out just have a good time, you know, and sort of escape. And that's what we want, and that's what we feel, you know, builds that community and builds that loyalty.
So what I'm hearing from all of you guys is that, you know, you've had to pivot your model a little bit, and we can't, you know, because of the pandemic, can't have large gatherings of people. And that's really what beer is about, is getting together and sharing, you know, this drink through, you know, either small groups hanging out at the bar or large events. And that really hasn't been able to happen. Now, what this kind of means for your staff is that they probably came on thinking they had a job that went one way and looked like this, and they were, you know, bartenders and event hosts and all sorts of things like that. And that became not possible anymore. And you guys had a really impressive pivot with home delivery, and that just brought all sorts of new challenges. So how do you keep employees engaged through periods of growth and the struggles that we've seen this year? What has that been like?
It's been interesting. It's been really fun to see some employees really step up. You know, bartenders who were now doing deliveries, or you know, warehouse guys who are helping more in packaging, or vice versa. Our bar back is now on the canning line. You know, we've still been able to hire people and still been able to expand, but it's been, that's the hardest part, is keeping people sort of eyes on the prize, that this company is greater than each individual, and sometimes you gotta clean the bathrooms, and sometimes you gotta, you know, not be a bartender. And it's been great to see some of the evolution of our staff, and you know, it just led to more leadership from people that were lower level and have been able to be promoted and increase responsibility. So it's great to see, but it was also a hard change, and they've really adapted well.
That's great. I mean, it sounds like you had a lot of people willing to step up. So I'm sure your culture is evolving quite a bit. So how are you maintaining other half's mission statement? Let's start with you, Matt.
First and foremost, quality. You know, this is a company built around community, top-notch products, and, you know, the fostering of that community. I think, you know, we will always first and foremost produce top-notch products, and I think what goes along with that is, you know, you can't continue to do that without being engaged with the community, without understanding what people want, and being dedicated to giving them the best version of that product that you can possibly make. You know, we're going to make whatever changes we need to make to keep going. You know, this company's, we fight. You know, we're not going to let things happen to us. We want to make things happen, and that's sort of been the priority. And I think that's really the stepping off point for anything else.
Sam and Andrew, how did you guys, as far as culture and mission statement goes, how did you see that evolve this year, or last year, I should say, at this point?
As our cultures evolve and how our missions evolve, I think one of the biggest points is being an example of it. Innovation from Sam, you know, leadership from Matt, being part of the culture, and that's sort of like our jobs have changed a lot. Where, you know, we were delivering beer 5 years ago, and now we're sort of like we're the guys who have to promote the culture and push forward. We have a all staff meeting right after this, and it's really just to promote the vision and what we're doing as other half. And I think our job is the three of us is to really be examples of what we want at the brewery and let people follow. And it seems to have worked so far, whether it's making great beer, or whether it's, you know, making sure the schedule is equitable, or we're, you know, expanding into DC, or, you know, any other projects we're doing. We're trying to be examples of it every day. I think that's the hardest part we have of our jobs.
Yeah, I did think about that for a second. I actually, when I think about it, I don't think our mission statement has really changed. The mechanics of a lot of what we do has had to change this year out of necessity. But I think our mission statement is, you know, just to boil it down quick, is, you know, community, community, community. Like, we try to keep the beer close to home as much as possible. It's not always how it goes, but for the majority of the beer we sell is direct to people in our community. And as we said before, people come into our tap rooms to engage and be part of the community that is our brewery and staff, and also their friends that come into the tap room and their new friends that are coming into the tap room. So I don't think that's changed, which is good.
Matt, so when you look ahead to 2021, which we're now in, where are the opportunities? What are the opportunities that you see for other half?
I truly believe that there is a ton of pent up demand. People really miss what regional and local craft breweries bring to the table, which is that that sense of community and then actually gathering. There's definitely light at the end of the tunnel. As leaders of the company, all we're trying to do is set ourselves up to be ready to accept that demand when it's unleashed. And that's why we've got our Domino sugar factory location up and running, and we'll be ready to be open on the waterfront, the East River in Williamsburg. We've got DC ready to take the 600 plus people at a time, which we can do. We've got online experiences coming for our Pastry Town and Green City festivals. We'll be adding to that. I think just being prepared and ready for people when they want to come back out, that's all we can really do. And then with increased production, we're able to sort of get our beers into more people's hands, and in turn get them down to the locations to see what Other Half truly is about.
How are you guys defining success moving forward? Has last year had any impact on that? What do you think, Sam?
I would say success moving forward is us continuing to make high quality products and to push innovation. And also, for me, success will be seeing our community back in place, people at our breweries hanging out, having a good time, because that's beer is supposed to be fun. That's what it's about. It's about getting together with your friends, hanging out, having a good time, and we all miss that. So that will be success for me next year.
Before we let you go, what's one piece of advice that each of you learned in 2020 that you'd offer other entrepreneurs out there that they can sort of take and build upon?
Stay loose, be ready to pivot at any moment. Even pre-pandemic, you still had to think that way, but that really highlighted it.
Definitely have a team. I think one of the strengths of Other Half is the fact that there's 3 of us, and there's 117 of us. You depend on your team; they'll pull through.
Stick to your vision. Be strong about what you believe in and what you want to do. I think that's one of the strengths of the 3 of us, is that we're very, very stubborn, and it's just entrepreneurship takes a huge amount of stubbornness, knowing that you can do something better than someone else, and keeping that vision, and going forward with it.
Thanks, guys. We really appreciate you joining us today, and congrats for being one of our rising stars this year.
A huge welcome to our next rising star, SHYLA Shepherd, the founder, president, and CEO of Bow and Arrow Brewing in Albuquerque, New Mexico. SHYLA, thanks for being here with us today. How are you?
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm doing well.
We're really excited to have you guys in our Rising Stars class this year. You've had a big year with a bunch of highlights. You installed the canning line to be able to pivot your business model. You created Desert Water, which is a really innovative line of hard sparkling water to offer drinkers something different with different flavors. And then I saw over the fall, you released Curio, which is the first beer aged in the foeder that you guys picked up from American Solera in Oklahoma. And you've got a really robust barrel souring program. So what other highlights from the year do you want to share with us?
Oh man, those were some of the major highlights for the year. Let's see, the canning line, we commissioned that the end of June and had cans on retail shelves by 4th of July weekend, which was our goal. So that was pretty amazing. And, the last half of the year was just staying on top of production, scheduling, and just keeping up with new label development. This is a whole new portfolio for us. And it's been really interesting just kind of watching and, being such a big part of our brand and seeing it become more fully formed over the last 6 months or so. So that was huge. And then Desert Water, we launched with it on draft, and we're working on finalizing the label for that. We've got our 5th-year anniversary coming up next month in February, which I think in this economic environment, in the time of COVID, it feels like a huge feat. So we want to do what we can to celebrate that, but we'll launch our Desert Water in cans next month. And again, we want to feature local indigenous ingredients. So we've got prickly pear, juniper berries. We're also adding a little lemon peel to that as well.
So with the canning line operational, a hard seltzer essentially in tow, what are sort of the long-lasting implications of some of those moves that you've made this year that are going to affect the business this year and, well on past your 5th-year anniversary?
I think, like I said, as we're, creating more labels and developing our portfolio around our wild and sours, our hard sparkling water, our hazy IPAs and pastry sours, we're going to continue to build on that strong brand and portfolio. And also we're seeing a lot of interest coming from outside of New Mexico into new markets. So we're focused on being, very strategic about where we choose to pursue and push our brand. Actually, just earlier this week, we sent our first cans out of state. So that was a huge milestone and win for us. We really try to focus on the wins, big or small these days. But we've got beer heading to Oregon soon. So I think just continuing to, really foster and develop that and, stay close to kind of what we see as our brand and what we're about, because it becomes very challenging to make sure that we are kind of staying on brand and within how we see ourselves as a company and as a brand. So those are interesting and fun challenges to be faced with right now. It's much better than where we were at the beginning of COVID, when pre-COVID, the majority of our revenue was from on-premise sales. And we were watching beer, expire in tanks and doing what we could to fill crowlers and growlers. And then suddenly crowlers were, in short supply. So it was just such a crazy time. So I feel very fortunate to be faced with the challenges that, we're seeing right now.
So through all of that, and it's been quite a year and quite a roller coaster, how do you keep employees engaged during periods of growth as well as the hard times like you just mentioned?
Sure. We try to keep a really positive and supportive workplace. I like to operate with a sense of gratitude, and I really try to make it a point to tell my team that they're doing a great job. And, I really mean it. They are. So I want to be mindful of that and continue to really, encourage our team and let them know that they're doing a great job. We also strive to be solutions focused and not try to dwell too much on the problems themselves, but really learn from them and move on. Like 2020, showed us last year is, we're capable of making decisions and being very decisive. But there always comes, unintended consequences or things you have to learn from. And we just don't have, time or energy to dwell on them too much. So we do that. And like I mentioned earlier, we really try to celebrate our wins, big and small, which keeps things positive and reinforces balance. So yeah, like last year, the cans all day, or last week, earlier this week with the cans going to Oregon, throughout the whole day. I know every one of us on the team were like poking our heads out the door to see outside whether the delivery truck had arrived yet. So I think maintaining that positive atmosphere is really key in this time.
You mentioned that new market expansion to Oregon. Is this something you're looking to do more of in 2021?
Yes. But again, we're being very strategic about where we're placing, our product and brand. So we're working on what that strategy looks like. And obviously distribution and, the regulatory environment within each new market is very different. So we're being, really thoughtful about how we pursue that.
Where might you look to go next?
Well, that's still, in discussions and in research right now. Oregon made a lot of sense for us. We felt like our brand resonated really well. We also look at our analytics and see, where the activity is coming from as well through our website and some other channels that we pay attention to. So there was that. And then we have, friends and colleagues that live up in Oregon as well that we felt could kind of help push our brand. So yeah, mostly it'll be kind of on the Western coast right now. Our brand is very much about the Great American Southwest. So we'll stay focused on that for now.
So when you think about 2020 and all the lessons that you've learned from, everything you've been through, what do you think is one piece of advice that you would offer other entrepreneurs?
One piece, I would say, I think being flexible and willing to adapt is an obvious one. So I won't focus too much on that, but I would say, don't be afraid to reach out for help, but be sure you do your own research and put the effort in first. This way, when you reach out to people, you have specific questions, and then others can more easily figure out how they can help you.
That's a good one.
Where do you see the opportunities for bow and arrow? What are sort of your focus areas this year, and where do you see the white space?
Yeah, so again, the canning line has been huge for us. And there was a learning curve for that as well. So, keeping focused on that and the ongoing development of our brand portfolio will remain a top priority this year, along with ramping up those, distributions to key market strategies. And also it's important that we keep evolving and focused on our plan for safe reopening of our indoor spaces. We had put our first offsite tap room on ice in favor of the new canning line last year. And so this year we'll get moving on that as well. So, and then just managing this growth and staying on top of production schedules and all of that is top priority as well.
What does the timeline look like for your second tap room?
It's just a matter of doing the build out. It's a vanilla shell right now. So, we still have to rough in for plumbing and electric and build walls and restrooms and stuff. But, it's not a huge space. It's 1,200 square feet. I have to get the plans, kind of some changes approved. But I think once we get rolling on it, probably I would say within second quarter would be the goal. It just kind of depends on how COVID is evolving, but I want to really start chipping away and making progress on that.
So as COVID has really changed the way a lot of folks look at the business, in the future, how are you defining success for bow and arrow?
Well, not only surviving this COVID world, but I think becoming a sought after brand where we're brewing as much as we can and brewing the beers and styles that get us excited. Curio was a good example of that. It was a rough year, and wild and sour programs and our foeder aged beers, they just take longer. They take more kind of love and care. So we stayed focused on those things, and it brought a lot of joy to what we were doing. And it was so refreshing and exciting to actually see how well this beer and the series have been received.
SHYLA, your voice in beer is very strong and very looked up to and very unique. And I think you've really been seen as a thought leader this year in terms of how people who are traditionally underrepresented in the beer industry can somebody that can be looked up to. So do you do any mentorship with fellow brewers, or do you have any advice for anyone who maybe doesn't always see themselves reflected in beer, but wants to be a part of the community?
Yeah. So, this past year, not as much. I feel like a lot of people are in survival mode, but I've definitely made an effort this year to engage in having some of these really difficult conversations, sharing some of these experiences that I don't always want to look back on and rehash and think about. But I think sharing these experiences is really powerful. I've gotten really great feedback on just saying, hey, I've experienced something similar and you're not alone. So I think there's a lot of power in doing that. So I've definitely made an effort to take on those opportunities, even though it's hard. It's emotionally taxing to rehash, some of these experiences. So there's that. And then just, I have native folks, I feel like on more so than in the brewing world, but just in general, being a native entrepreneur is bringing some attention to me. So I'll get, kind of random social media messages or emails that, I make it a point to respond to, and just encourage them, because, a lot of business and entrepreneurship is action. And whether or not you're successful or you fail, you learn something. But I think the most important part is just to move forward, put yourself out there.
This has been awesome. Thank you for taking the time out to share with us today. And we're so excited to have you as one of our 2020 Rising Stars.
Oh, thank you so much. It's such an honor.
So let's welcome our next rising star, Christopher Johnson, head brewer and co-owner of Green Bench Brewing in St. Petersburg, Florida. Thanks for joining us, Chris.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. I'm glad to be here with you.
We're so happy to have you as part of our 2020 Rising Stars class. And 2020, not a great year due to the pandemic, but Green Bench persevered. You guys did a lot of cool things, from your, I guess, all of the philanthropic efforts that you did, such as Taps and Scraps or the holiday toy drive with beer culture. And, when you reflect on 2020, what stands out as some of the highlights for Green Bench?
Well, unfortunately, obviously, some of the highlights were sad and difficult and hard. So I think what the first thing I think about is the day that we had to lay off most of our staff and how difficult that was. A lot of them had been with us pretty much since we opened, so that was very hard to kind of say goodbye to them, at least for a short period of time. But at the time, it felt indefinite. We had no idea how long it would have been till we could have brought anyone back. So honestly, that's probably the biggest highlight in my mind, was that day and how difficult that was. And then it's followed up by the day in which we were able to call a lot of them back and say, we're opening back up and we're excited about that. Unfortunately, then the next thought would be the second time we got shut down, and then subsequently us then reopening, which has obviously been, it's been a roller coaster of a year, but I think in the end, it made us all really confident, I think, in the future. It made us feel as if we could kind of weather any storm that came along. It gave us it just gave us a lot of confidence in each other. And then I'd say the next thing would really be how well our staff has actually managed the pandemic without really having to put too many guidelines in place. And we have guidelines in the tasting room for customers, but not really guidelines on the staff. We've been communicating so well, and our staff has taken it upon themselves to make sure to get tested very often, to make sure that we're constantly communicating with each other. I mean, the simple fact is, as if more than 2 people at once are positive with COVID, we have to shut the tasting room down. And that's not really something we can afford. And so without having to tell anybody, everyone, including myself, we get tested every week. We constantly talk to each other. If someone is positive, we isolate immediately. And then as a business, we've been able to find a way to continue to compensate people when they haven't been able to work. So honestly, I think going into 2021, we feel extremely positive and confident in our ability to manage ourselves through very difficult times, as difficult as we ever could have imagined. And then on top of that, it allowed us a lot of time, and the time that we had, we used it to try and give back to our community, to try to, as you mentioned, the toy drive and back to school drive, beer culture for the kids. And then I've been able to spend a lot more time in a lot of nonprofits here locally that have really just have meant the world to me.
That's awesome. I mean, in the words of esteemed, noted scholar Kelly Clarkson, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So you guys definitely have one of those years. I know the last time we saw you during Brew Talks over the summer, you guys were dealing with a lot of really confusing stuff at the state government level. So how has any of that changed your operations?
Yeah, those were so frustrating. I mean, obviously, I definitely remember talking to you guys and being just so unbelievably frustrated that even the people telling us what we could and couldn't do didn't know why or how, or didn't know what the details were of what we were allowed to do and what we weren't allowed to do. Honestly, and luckily, soon after we had our conversation, the governor actually came here and had a sit-down conversation with us, and he basically said, "Look, we need to open you guys back up." But it's up to everyone to be responsible so that we make sure that we can stay open. And your business and other businesses they're just gonna die if we don't open them back up. But we need you guys on board, and we need to make sure that we're being as safe as possible. And so he kept his word to us. Within 3 weeks we were back open again, and he said, we're not going to close you back down. We do have some local ordinances that actually we support anyway. We would have done even if they weren't available, like mask wearing, making sure people had to be separated, and capacity constraints. That frankly we actually have even denser capacity constraints on ourselves that we personally adhere to. But because ultimately, looking back on the last time we spoke, speaking of that specifically, I was so frustrated and sad that we had to be closed, that anything I can do to make sure that we stayed open is worth it, So even if it meant we had to have less people in here and it meant our hours were decreased, open is open. And so I think, I'm a lot more optimistic now that we can kind of still stay open through something like a pandemic.
I'm glad that you're feeling a lot more optimistic, because I was frustrated for you when we talked during Brew Talks. So I guess as you push forward into 2021, what are some of the things that you're looking to sort of carry over? What are some of the long lasting impacts of what you went through in 2020?
Ironically, some of the systems in place that we actually find some efficiencies in this, I think, in operations, even especially in the tasting room. For example, if you were to walk into our tasting room pre-pandemic, you're going to have seats at the bar. They're generally packed. You're going to have tables as well. They're packed. And some evenings, it got so busy that it was very difficult, frankly, to even get to the bar and order beer. And it was a cluster that we weren't even super excited about ourselves at the time. And I think actually the efficiency that we found through the pandemic of making sure people walked in, got into a sort of a stand off line, ordered their beer, picked it up at a window outside. We found some efficiencies in that I think truly we're actually going to be able to carry over once things eventually do open back up. We've actually had a lot of conversations about how we think we're actually probably going to keep that element somehow, and maybe even decrease the bar sitting a little bit, because we found that we've been able to be a lot more efficient on getting products to consumers, and then also being able to have a conversation with them instead of a bartender trying to speak through 4 people to get to the person behind them. So it's stuff like that, some small operation things that I think will really be able to carry over and actually be a better experience for everyone in the long run.
How have you been keeping your employees engaged during the last year?
Well, luckily we had a lot of, like I said, we had a lot of time on our hands. So we've actually been making a ton of new beers. We've also, on the production side, we've been able to experiment on new processes. We installed a decoction vessel about a year and a half ago, but we haven't really had, you got to think a year and a half ago, we're full throttle, max capacity, filling orders all the time. And then the pandemic hits and it slows things down. We've been able to make styles of beer that we've been excited about that we just haven't really had the space and time to produce. And we've been able to sort of hone in a lot of our lager production and decoction process, which then our taste room staff has been super excited about, because typically speaking, we all have very similar drinking habits here at Green Bench. We all kind of like the same styles. We like to drink all day long. We're in Florida. So we like low alcohol, really crisp beers. And I think a lot of the beers that we've been making have benefited from that. In addition to lagers, Web City Cellar, where we make a lot of mixed culture beers, we've had time just to let a lot of these beers sit at 65 degrees year round in our cellar. And so these new blends of mixed culture beers coming out, I think have benefited from that extra, 4 to 6 months of not being touched. And actually our blends are tasting extremely mature.
That's awesome. So what are some of the things, you went through so much in 2020. So what's like a piece of advice maybe that you'd give to another entrepreneur out there as we head into 2021? I guess we're in 2021, something that they could sort of take and apply to their business.
I would say trust in the hard decisions sometimes, as difficult as that is, and sometimes you feel like everything in you is saying you don't want to make some very tough decisions. If it's somewhat clear, obviously even on paper, that this is the right decision for the longevity of your business and frankly for your employees, even if it means having to let them go for a certain period of time. If it's the best for the business, and as difficult as that is, trust in those hard decisions. Trust that in the long run, it's hopefully going to not only make your business stronger, but I think yourself as a leader too. I think we come out on the other side having built even more trust in our staff and our employees, knowing that them coming on the other side, knowing that actually you guys, as difficult as that was and as hurtful as it may have been for everybody, it was the right decision for everyone in the long run. And I think there's a lot of trust that was built in that process.
So looking ahead at the coming year, where do you see the opportunities for Green Bench and what areas are you planning to focus in?
Well, we actually find ourselves in a uniquely advantageous, I think, position, namely because we kind of have capacity now. I was kind of worried going into 2020 as quickly as we were ramping up, that frankly, I wasn't going to be able to keep up with a lot of the production that I saw looming near the end of 2020. And actually the shutdown kind of slowed us down, which was painful for sure, financially and personally to a lot of people. But what's nice is now looking into 2021, we actually don't have the same production constraints, I think, going into this year. And I think we've been able to spend a lot of that time that we've had off trimming a lot of the fat, if you will, off the business to make sure that a lot of the efficiencies are really going to shine in this year coming forward. That frankly, I was afraid with how quickly we were producing beers. The cash flow was just intense at the beginning of 2020, which is exciting for us because we had never really been ramped up that strongly. But I think this is actually a healthier position than that one was, where we have a little bit of capacity. We have the ability to make a lot more decisions, I think, on the fly due to that cash flow, and understanding that because we had to trim some of that fat and make ourselves a little bit more lean as a business, that I think we're in a better position to manage some of those efficiencies and implement a lot more efficiencies this year. So our hope is that actually we're going to see some really positive financial changes this year.
It sounds like you've really been able to sort of take a step back, evaluate the business, and really see where the opportunities truly are, or what's best for the business, even if it was a difficult year.
Absolutely. I mean, again, because we had so much time on our hands, there was almost nothing else to do but try to, do your best to see like, okay, well, if and when we come back from this, and if and when we can bring people back, what sort of environment do we want for them? And frankly, what sort of environment would be best for the business as a whole? Let's truly assess what our numbers looked like. I spent a lot of time, to be honest with you, building spreadsheets. I built so many spreadsheets. I got so good at Excel. So we were able to plug a bunch of numbers in, really have really deep discussions about what that would look like on the other end. And yeah, man, honestly, I'm actually excited. And maybe that's because this time compared to the last time we spoke, we're actually open. So I'm pretty stoked.
Everything seems to have changed after 2020. How do you view success in the future? How are you defining it?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. I mean, I think the definition of success has definitely evolved for us all. I almost feel like we succeeded by getting through that year alone, right? So by itself, I'm like, oh man, we've reached success. We've survived what was something that none of us could have imagined was going to happen. I think from here on out, it's going to be trying to stay efficient and sustainable. In addition to that, it's understanding that some of the things we were able to accomplish in 2020 because we had that extra time on our hands, things like the philanthropic initiatives that we've been able to do, that stuff meant so much to us personally and as a business as a whole, that I think success moving forward is going to be making sure that stays in the balance of what we do. That it's not necessarily about the ramp up. It's not necessarily about the push to grow. Not necessarily saying that was always our goal, but I think before it happened to us and we were in that position of growing so quickly, it was something that we always wanted. And then having gone through that and then the slowdown and then seeing that like what I'm actually getting back personally and as a business, what we're getting back for doing those and for giving back to our community has been just as, if not more rewarding than anything we ever thought we were going to succeed at or accomplish rather.
That's fantastic. We are so happy to have you on our 2020 class of Rising Stars. Thanks for taking the time out to talk with us today, Chris.
Absolutely, man. Thank you. Anytime. I appreciate you guys so much.
Our pleasure.
Thanks, Chris. Hopefully we can come see you soon.
I know, that'd be cool. That'd be awesome.
A huge welcome to our next rising stars. We have Bill Schufelt and John Walker, the co-founders of Athletic Brewing, home based in Stratford, Connecticut, but with a San Diego office and brewery as well. Hi guys, how are you?
Well, thanks for having us.
Hey, great. Justin, thank you so much for having us.
You guys have had a massive year in 2020, and I believe our data shows that the Athletic has a 60% share of the non-alcoholic craft beer market. You should be so proud of that. And I don't know, when you guys look back at 2020, what stands out to you as some of the biggest highlights for the year?
I could definitely speak to growing the team and completing our San Diego build with a brand new team. There was a boatload of challenges given the circumstances, but we having an incredible crew who rallied together and got the whole facility up and running even a week early. So just really thankful for that. It was a huge achievement, and they've been continuing to grow it and excel and perfect everything since that day. So it's been great.
A week early, that never happens. Bill, what are some of the high points for you?
Yeah, definitely the team. We've been so lucky with the teammates we've been able to attract this year and get on board. Yeah, we entered the year with kind of one whole set of plans and kind of executed on a similar but very different set of plans on the year. In many ways, COVID wiped off 90% of our marketing ideas and things like that, but it really helped us also in some ways. We were able to grow our distribution network probably faster than we would have otherwise, and identified 55 great partners across 30 states to grow our network. And yeah, I'm just proud of our team, how we've been kind of stacking bricks all year, not letting the pandemic shut down all our options, and being creative with how we approach solutions for the year.
So you guys, your sales kind of skyrocketed in 2020. I believe you posted $15 million in sales after posting 2.5 million in sales in 2019. Just mentioned the market share that you guys have been able to capture. You've had major distribution expansion. So, and then the San Diego brewery. So all of that, along with the investment that you guys have received, you've been able to accelerate. What are sort of the, what's the 5-year plan at this point? Because you guys are on sort of the rocket ship.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't feel like a rocket ship every day, where something is definitely blowing up every day. I'm just not sure it's rocket fuel. But yeah, it was definitely a good year in terms of 2019 had been very capacity constrained. So we were really excited to get the Athletic West Brewery in San Diego up and running in June, and really be able to serve our wholesalers' needs and meet our online customers' demand. Excuse me, as well. So we were really excited to just be able to get a lot more beer out into the world. In terms of a 5-year plan, I mean, we really don't have any hard and set goals, number forecast. We don't need to grow 20% to pay down debt or any specific metric like that. Our goals are definitely around community, our team, quality of life, the impact we're having on the world. We're super proud to donate over $500,000 to different charitable organizations last year, with 300,000 of that being in our 2 for the Trails program, where we donate 2% of all revenue to trail and park cleanups. So as revenue grows in the year forward, we can make a huge dent in the world by donating more to trail and park cleanups. And so in that, not only are our products having a positive impact on our customers' lives, but then we're having a bigger impact on the environment and being a great example for other companies as well.
You both seem so team focused and really employee oriented, which is really great. So how do you keep the team engaged when things are a little crazy? John, what have you found in terms of managing the group?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And especially, not only are we separated largely because of the circumstances, but also geographically speaking now, building this team. One way that we do it is, we're very transparent. We have monthly team meetings in addition to, the 300 Zooms that we all do in any given week with each other, but everybody comes together and catches up. We share all the news, the happenings of the month, what's coming up in the next quarter, and things of that nature. We've got super active Slack type channels, just lots of lines of communication. And then from a brewing and team development perspective, we've got this brewing program where we've got an East Coast counterpart and a West Coast counterpart, and they work together and collaborate on recipes and brew it at one of the facilities, and we alternate facilities, ship beer back and forth, and then we do group tastings on Zoom. So it's been fun and educational and great for a team and stuff like that.
You've had quite a year, as we've just keep saying. So what's one thing that each of you have learned in 2020 that you would offer as a piece of advice to fellow entrepreneurs?
Definitely a lot. I know John and I have been no ego from day one. And like, we are very cognizant that just because we had the first ideas in this business, the next 99 ideas are coming from our team. And so we have an extremely horizontal and collaborative team, and a lot of cross-channel communication, as John suggested. And our territory managers were super adaptive during the whole downtime. There were extended periods, I think 3 different times, where we pulled our full territory manager team off the road for more than 3 weeks. And in that, I would say we didn't really miss a beat, from sending out postcards to accounts, sending out samples, like all sorts of different initiatives. I think it's really just like staying close to your team and encouraging that transparency John was talking about, and like a not afraid to fail culture.
Yeah, that, and I echo that, but then also go along with just trust your teammates. We're all here together on the same mission, and like Bill said, we've had some great ideas, but there are lots more out there. And so just being willing and open-minded to accept different ideas so that you can succeed and adapt in challenging circumstances.
Bill, you mentioned not having an ego or staying humble. How do you stay humble when you have a slate of celebrity investors such as JJ Watt or Justin Tuck?
I mean, those guys are like exactly as advertised. JJ was really into us because of our charitable element. So was Blake Mykowski and Lance Armstrong with his associations with Livestrong. I mean, these guys all led with impact first, and that was kind of like our health impact, and then our like charitable impact are things they were tied to. I mean, it's easy not to have an ego when you're making most of the mistakes at the company, for sure. Also, but yeah, it's also really just being customer focused. I mean, we're always like razor focused on what our customers are saying, and like they kind of drive everything we do, and we're always listening, be it quality, iterating better experiences, responding to reviews and things like that. So yeah, we're just kind of so busy. There's definitely no room for ego.
Where do you guys see craft non-alcoholic beer going in the next couple of years? Is there a ceiling? Are we just like getting started? What do you think, John?
I think we're just getting started, and you're seeing that with all the other brands that are coming to market, now or soon. I think we've had a great time like early on, but everybody's catching up and realizing that this is also just a great opportunity. It's just another great beer. It's additive, and everybody can do this, and we're looking forward to everybody else helping to build the category, because we definitely can't do it alone. So people are catching on, and it's great for you, and the public is following suit. So it's pretty exciting to see the growth.
Did the interest in non-alc that grew over the pandemic surprise you guys at all, or was that something that you thought was coming?
I actually think it's probably what it would have done regardless. It had been on this trend of acceleration. So the category grew 6% in 2018, 23% in 2019. And even before March, it was tracking up 40% year to date. And that really doesn't include a lot of channels in that data. And craft non-alcoholic's growing significantly faster. That's up 300+%, because that doesn't include the big legacy brands that are kind of stagnating. And so like John and I both approach this category from a customer standpoint. Like, our customer need led us to this category. We realized that there are 5 other nights of the week where great beer can be consumed and not throw you off your game. There are other hours of the day. And then there's a whole 50% of the non-beer drinking world that could potentially be added into the beer world. So we see a huge amount of complementary occasions that we can add to the beer world. over a decade plus of time. And so I don't love throwing delusional numbers out there, but definitely approaching the category as a customer, I wouldn't see why that this couldn't grow to like 10 to 20% of the beer category. But it's not that it's cannibalizing share. I think it's just adding those days to the week into it and stealing from all the gaps in ready to drink, soft drinks, non-alcoholic drinks, sugary sodas, things like that, and bringing it to beer.
When we look ahead at 2021, where are you seeing the opportunities?
I think John and I are probably both aligned on leading with quality. One of our biggest concerns is that, so as we were saying, like we approached this as it was a customer need being ourselves. And then John and I spent a year home brewing on Gatorade jugs, trying to figure out how to do better non-alcoholic beer, like totally different than it's ever been done before. Use great organic ingredients, Pacific Northwest hops, and make a truly special craft beer that just happened to be non-alcoholic. We are worried about the trend that there's a lot of like trend chasing going on, and it, in some ways, it feels like marketing and sales ideas that at the 11th hour make it to the brewing team, and it's tough to do something like this in a short time frame. So I guess what we're saying is we're worried about quality in the category, where if quality is not great, people are going to go back to not drinking non-alcoholic beer. And it's not that every non-alcoholic beer that's launched has grown the category. I mean, there are non-alcoholic beers launching that kind of go away still, and it's just like Bart Watson and everyone at the BA always says, like quality has to lead craft beer for craft beer to continue to gain share. And that's kind of exactly how we align as well.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are in a tough spot because all eyes are on you for craft non-alc. So you have to be exemplary, which not to scare you, but it's a high pedestal to be on.
Well, we've definitely invested ahead of that with quality. Like in terms of big food safety equipment, we have an incredible food safety and regulatory lead, great lab teams, great brewing teams. And so we're really investing out in front of this category and are definitely ready to help people on like food safety and regulatory challenges, because that's over half the battle, I would say.
So before we let you guys get out of here, 2020 was such an odd year, but you guys managed a lot of growth. When you look at 2021 and beyond, how is your definition of success changed?
So we had our traditional Two for the Trails program in 2020. We, as a team collectively, with how like the world changed this year, and we changed our impact program to meet that. And so we have a lot more happening in broader channels in our charitable impact program, from supporting people of color with opportunity in the community from the ground up. We have some great collaborations coming on that front. The National Restaurant Association Employee Relief Fund, we made a huge effort in the beginning of the pandemic with that. And then, so like definitely bigger impact is kind of what we seek to have. And really just making great beer for our customers. I mean, it's something where there was like no like excited customers in this category 5 years ago. And like now we're doing these incredible limited release programs and all this fun experimentation. So it's just a totally new world out there, and we're excited to have a great team and great breweries.
Guys, congratulations on being in our 2020 class of Rising Stars. We're so psyched to have you, and thanks for sharing today.
Thank you. It's an honor.
Thank you so much for having us on. Really appreciate it.
No,
Thank you, guys.
Our pleasure, guys.
Good to see you.
You as well.
You guys too.
Our next rising star is Peter HOEY from Urban Roots. Peter's the owner and brewer. Urban Roots is based in Sacramento, California. Thanks for being with us, Peter. How are you?
I'm excellent. Thanks for having me. This is exciting.
Oh, so glad that you can make it. And we're really excited to have you in our 2020 class of Rising Stars. You guys had quite a year. You're really food focused and had a lot of really interesting pivots in terms of food service, which we found impressive. But you did quite a few collaborations in the year. So in August, you guys teamed up with ALLAGASH in Portland, Maine to brew a beer for Fresh Fest. In December, you partnered with our friends down in the LA area, Crowns and Hops, and you've launched DTC shipping within California. So that's quite a bit. But when you look back on 2020, what were some of your own highlights for the year?
It was really how the community rallied and came to support local breweries, not just ours, but all the breweries in Sacramento. There was always a drumbeat of, hey guys, don't forget about these guys. Go buy beer to go, support, buy some merch, buy a gift card, whatever you can do to keep everybody going through the pandemic. Because so many of these businesses rely on direct-to-consumer sales. They rely on pint sales in their tasting rooms. That to make this pivot to go only even if you're doing the same volume, is a major hit to your business.
When you're pivoting and you're making changes sort of on the fly, and you're trying to make it through, and clearly you have. Now that you're on the other side, or at least hopefully we're sort of on the other side of this, what do you see as some of those long-lasting implications for the business moving forward?
For ours, we were really nimble and we did not make long-term decisions or long-term commitments based on these short-term issues, right? I mean, it's a year, but in the life of the business, it's short-term. So we're still fairly nimble and can go back to being a brew pub. I mean, prior to this, we would package beer once a month, maybe once every other month, for a special can release, for a collaboration, for something of note that we wanted to kind of get out into the world. But I mean, really, we're a brew pub. We're a restaurant. 90% of our beer was sold across the bar before this, and we've completely flipped. 90% is now in distro, and we're selling about 10%, in pints across the bar. So when we're able to open safely again, we can go back to being a brew pub. So it'll change in that regard, but it's going to be, that transition is going to be hopefully what starts happening this year, and we can kind of see how that plays out.
So you guys have had quite a year and lots of ups and downs, but a lot of uncertainty. And how do you keep the employees engaged throughout all of that?
Well, in the brewery, we're actually up in production over last year. So we added staff, and just keeping busy is keeping them engaged. Prior to canning and bottling all this beer, we would just fill serving tanks. So there's a whole nother component of a day required to package beer. But really, so we're busy for one. But the other is, I just asked the team, I said, what do you want to brew? Like, this is like, we have to figure out like what styles, and we've always brewed a really wide array of styles. We're like, this is, what styles of beer intrigue you? What do you want to brew? And it relaunched our Saison program. We'd always produced a bunch of them, but like the first 3 beers when we were shut down that we brewed were, mixed culture Saison, mostly Brett forward beers that take 2-3 months to produce, because we're like, we don't know when we're going to be open to the public again. So peppering in a wide variety of styles. And like I said, fortunately, we've just been really busy on the brewing side.
We're now 9-10 months into this pandemic. So when you look back at 2020 and you're able to sort of reflect, what's maybe one piece of advice that you could give another entrepreneur out there that they could apply to their business?
Well, obviously be nimble. You need to react, and not just in your creativity for how you're going to market, but changing your direction to fill a need. And what I mean by that is, when this first happened, we knew that families needed inexpensive, fast, good meals. So in the kitchen side, we started doing family meals right away. That was a need that we felt in the community. On the brewing side, the need that we were feeling there was for distribution. We hadn't sold to grocery stores before, so we started going into grocery stores because they were asking for our beer, and we now had capacity to do that. And then the other thing is, one of the first things that my business partner and I talked about was readjusting what our goals were. Because it's really frustrating if you're growing at 30, 40, 50% a year, and you're profitable and you're reinvesting, and you're having that type of success, to then say, well, crap, like we actually were down 35% in Q2 of last year. Is that failure? And then redefining what your success is. And we had the most beneficial conversation to say, all right, success is now meeting payroll, paying rent, and being open tomorrow. And the main thing was, we put all the focus on our staff and stopped really stressing about high labor costs, or, obviously, don't push into the red, but like our target labor costs changed to make sure that we were still paying our employees, that they were taken care of. And then job 2 was, all right, can we be profitable operating this way?
So you guys made this big pivot to distribution, which was new for you.
Mhm.
Do you have any plans to expand that into 2021?
Right now, we're just kind of holding where we're at. We did take on. We'd already been in discussions with Upstanding Distribution in Oregon. We were going to launch them, or actually, I think we did launch them in January already, right before this happened. Since the pandemic, we signed with Culture Beverage in Colorado. We're kind of holding where we're at as we wait and see how things unfold. So like I said, we have a very large restaurant. We sell a lot of our volume here on site by the pint. So we want to be sure to support our distribution partners going forward. We don't want, I've seen a lot of breweries go out and sign distribution contracts to keep the lights on, to get sales going. And we don't want to have to roll anything back with any of the partners that we select throughout as we slowly increase our distribution. We've always been with Lime Ventures in California, and they've been a fantastic partner through this. We approach each of those relationships as a partnership, and we don't want to be opportunistic, and we don't want to have short-term relationships. So right now we're in kind of a holding pattern with those three plus our local distro. The short answer is we'll see. I need to see what it's going to look like when things open up, how they open up, at what stage, what capacity we can have in the restaurant. Because like I said, the restaurant is a big draw for our volume. And we're piling all of our profits into expanding, buying more tanks, canning lines, etc. And this year, I think everyone is like, well, let's just hold and see what happens. So I'm not going to have, 4, 5, 6 new tanks this year. Very likely won't have that to be able to start adding more distribution partners.
It's really smart. I feel like you guys have really, weighed all of your options and made really, really intelligent business decisions in the past years.
That's good. We question that sometimes. We're trying to do our best. So I reinforce that more. We like.
Well, we are psyched to have you in our class of 2020 Rising Stars. Congratulations, and thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us.
We really appreciate you giving us a little focus on this. So it's really we're honored to be here. So thank you so much.
Cannot wait to come out for dinner and a beer whenever we're allowed to travel again.
Your place is awesome. Wait to have you. Yeah, I can vouch. It's awesome.
So cool. Yeah, I remember you came through during the summit, I believe, right?
Yeah, definitely. Backspace is very, very cool. So
the backspace this is another pivot. It was our barrel room, but it was also event space for 100, 120 people to have gatherings and dinners and things. And now it's full. That's the room I'm in now. It's full of barrels. So
wow.
One thing we spent the last year doing was just piling beer into barrels. So this is going to be the year of barrel aged beer for us.
Fun.
Nice. Well, thanks for doing this, Peter.
Thanks, Peter.
We're so happy to have you in the class and so happy to have you here.
It's exciting. Again, appreciate it very much.
Thank you. See you soon.
Cheers. Bye.
Cheers. And let's welcome one more rising star from Jack's Abbey Craft Lagers in Framingham, Massachusetts, Sam Hendler, one of the co-founders of the brewery. Sam, thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Man, you have been on one hell of a ride in 2020. You let's start with like the thought leadership that you had to do as the president of the Massachusetts Brewers Guild, leading the guild, helping finally achieve franchise law reform in the state of Massachusetts. You've made pandemic pivots. Plans were scuttled, but you sort of made the best of things. And you guys stepped up, offered free meals for local students when schools first closed. And then you guys got a huge partnership with the Boston Celtics. What a year. So I think I broke it down a little bit, but when you look back at 2020, how do you reflect on the year?
It was a crazy year. It's one I certainly have no desire to go back and relive. That said, I think almost uniquely proud of the way we managed to navigate the year. I learned a lot about myself and my family and the brewery and the community we have around us. It was a uniquely challenging year. I guess I should say, I hope it was a uniquely challenging year. But here we are. It's 2021. We're still standing. We got a lot done, and hopefully we will come back from this stronger than ever.
You guys had to make a lot of tough calls. I remember we touched base going into the summer where you guys had to decide to shelve a planned new seasonal release so that your fall seasonal could have clear runway. And just a lot of things like that where you had to make really tough calls. So what do you think are going to be some of the long-lasting implications of those really wise pivots throughout the year?
Yeah, I mean, that was a relatively easy call. The tough calls that happened in 2020 were all about staffing. And, we had to furlough employees, we had to let go of employees, we had to reduce people's salaries. Those were the tough calls in 2020. Everything else really pales in comparison. The long-term effects, it's really so hard to say. I think, we stripped everything down here to what was absolutely necessary. It was incumbent upon, there was no other option, right? Survival was at stake, and we stripped it down to what is 100% necessary. And I think we learned a lot about ourselves and the business we have in that process. So hopefully we'll be leaner but stronger and tighter as a group on the other side of this thing. We're not there yet, but hopefully soon.
What did you sort of learn in leaning down the business? What did you sort of take away as these are the essential things that we need to do versus the things that are sort of nice to do?
The biggest thing was, and this won't surprise anybody, but we have a large facility here, and producing volumes of beer is our best path to financial success. In the summertime, it was an exceedingly difficult period, but luckily our off-premise can business really pulled through, and we were able to do enough volume in some of those key months to really build a bridge to 2021. And it's just one of those realities about the beer business is you either need to do a lot of volume or you need to do a ton of direct to consumer at super high margins. And I think we were kind of in a middle ground on both, where we were doing a lot of both, but we weren't the biggest of either. But seeing the way we could perform getting beer out of this facility in the summer months was really encouraging, and I think paves a road for us forward.
You talked about having to make a lot of tough calls with regards to the staff, and I'm sure they've really felt the stress of the year as well. So how do you as a leader keep the team engaged and motivated when things are so unpredictable?
I mean, for sure, the toughest challenge in 2020. And I think it remains a significant challenge, because I think we're probably not unique in the brewing industry in that when we were hitting rough patches or when there was some sort of dysfunction with the staff, like the playbook was always, we need to get together. Let's do an event together. Let's have a meal together. Let's drink some beer together and kind of hash out the issues. And that just was off the table, right? It wasn't an option to put the whole staff in a room together and talk through whatever was going on. So it really, really challenged us. And I don't think we did a great job of it the first half. I mean, I think a lot of it was how stressed we were and how stressed the staff was. I'm not sure how possible it would have been to really succeed at it. The first half of COVID, I think we've gotten better at it. Things like Zoom and making sure people are updated. A lot of that happened naturally. We would all have lunch together in the beer hall, and there was just this natural conversation. And hey, we need to build in structured communication where the whole team knows what's going on. And it can't just be Zoom because some people don't engage on Zoom. It can't just be email because some people don't engage on email. It can't just be any one thing. We really need to do a lot more in the way of internal communications. And, for better or worse, probably for worse, just talking about internal communications in depth is not a conversation that had really happened much at Jack Savvy.
So it sounds like you've learned a lot. What advice would you give to fellow entrepreneurs?
As far as like leading a group, be really proactive and conscious of your internal communication strategy. I think we were really spoiled and we had all of this just built in stuff. Again, eating lunch together and in an office together and just, you know, it was all happening. We were all here. And I think we didn't build nearly enough structure to our internal communications. Just from simple stuff like, you know, the weekly newsletter and, you know, happy birthdays and employee milestones and there all of these things that just happen naturally if you can be in the office together every single day that we needed to bring to a structured, organized level. And we're not there yet. It's not done, but I think we're light years ahead of where we were in the past.
So I mentioned the partnership that you all have with the Celtics at the top here, and that it's a collaboration beer, Pride and Parquet, a hoppy lager. What do you think that's going to do for the brand moving forward? And then what other opportunities are you sort of focusing on out in the marketplace in 2021?
Yeah, this is an awesome partnership, and it is bigger than just one beer. Pride and Parquet is awesome, but we are the official craft brewery of the Boston Celtics. And it encompasses the entire Jack Savvy portfolio. So yeah, the collaboration beer is kind of the center point of that, the focal point, Pride and Parquet. But the big picture is building this relationship with one of the like great legacy institutions of Boston. It felt like a once in a lifetime opportunity. And, you know, as we look out longer term, we want to build the Jack Savvy brand into one that is a great Boston institution. And we're not there yet. And we've got, you know, hopefully we'll get there in 5 years or 10 years or 20. That's something that is earned with time, not with a splash overnight. But I think that kind of stature and that kind of brand is something that was just an unbelievable opportunity to partner with. As far as the rest of the marketplace, I mean, our focus, especially for the front half of the year, is off premise. That's where we know there will be business. This whole Celtics program is driving a lot of programming at retail, at grocery. So we're really, really excited for 2021 and what it can bring to the brewery.
What are the early returns that you're getting on the Pride and Parquet from your wholesalers and retailers?
Yeah, the buy-in has been exceptional. We're just at the tip of the iceberg as far as the volume going out the door. We're really we can't even load distributors in at this point. It's hitting their docks and immediately turning around into the marketplace, and we'll catch up with that. That's a pretty typical cycle at the beginning of something like this. I think what has been just clear off the bat is the amount of traction we're getting on display programming and really just bigger end cap type programming in chain retailers, grocery stores is something light years ahead of any kind of traction we've had in the past.
Well, and I'm sure as soon as we can have attendance at games again, you'll have so many more arrows in your quiver to activate around. So I'm sure you guys are really looking forward to going to be able to go to the Garden.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole nother part of the deal that obviously is not in place at the moment because there are no fans in the stands, but we're very excited to get there at some point, and yeah, can't wait. Hopefully for the playoffs this summer. We'll see.
That would be nice. So has the way that you define success changed? Because I remember you came on Brewbound Frontlines in June and we were having a conversation about this and we were talking about growth and you were you felt very strongly that growth is not the only measure of success. So when you look back at last year and what's coming up this year, how are you measuring what success looks like?
I mean, I have two pretty simple markers that I've put out for myself for Jack's Abbey's success in 2021. One is financial, and it's being able to provide a stable financial income to our family. That includes everybody who works here, our larger family. And two is to make sure that every employee feels valued every day they're in the building. And every employee is a unique human and has different ways that they want to be shown appreciation, and we need to make sure we're meeting everybody there. And if we can do those two things, it's going to be a really good year.
Those are pretty admirable aspirations. So, Sam, we are psyched to have Jack's Abbey as one of our rising stars. Thanks for taking time out today and joining us and talking about the journey last year and the journey ahead.
Thank you very much for having me.